This is but one legend of which the people speak. Long ago in the kingdom of Hyrule, a wicked wind mage appeared. His name was Vaati. Using his powers, Vaati terrorized the kingdom and its villages. He kidnapped many beautiful girls who caught his fancy as he did so. Many knights and brave men attempted to rescue the kidnapped girls, but they could not. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a young boy with a sword by his side appeared. This lone traveler volunteered to rescue the kidnapped maidens. He traveled to Vaati's palace and returned with the maidens and the wind mage trapped within his mystical sword. The boy then just left as quickly as he appeared. How had he done it? According to the maidens, when he held the sword, he shattered into 4 pieces, each an exact copy of himself. The 4 heroes worked together to defeat the sorcerer. The people did not believe the story, but they deemed the sword the Four-Sword all the same. As the story of the sword spread, people enshrined it, and assigned a protector whose job it was to watch over the shrine and the blade itself. This is Legendary Adventures, a Legend of Zelda playthrough podcast. What you heard was my retelling of the prologue of the Legend of Zelda Four Swords as outlined in the manual. This week we're tackling the first 4 levels of Four Swords Anniversary Edition in single-player mode to rescue Princess Zelda. Within the land of Hyrule there is a carved stone cavern. Pillars stand on the outer edge of the cavern, topped with carvings representing the elements: earth, wind, water, and fire. In the center of the cavern there sits a stone pedestal, with a sword driven deep inside, recalling Arthurian myth. A relief carving of an eye stares down on the sword in the stone, keeping a lonely, unblinking, unceasing watch. The cavern itself is overgrown. Moss and vines cover the walls, pillars, and pedestal. Everything is still recognizable. This is not a completely forgotten or unvisited place, but it's not frequently used. As if to prove that, 2 figures enter. A princess clad in pink, a tall red bow holds up her hair in a ponytail. A long cape flows behind her, and a boy dressed in a green tunic sporting a long green cap. This is Zelda and her hero, Link. Zelda thanks Link for meeting her in this place. She sensed the seal holding in the wind mage, Vaati, is weakening. It is her intention to ensure that Vaati does not escape. The seal is held in place by the magical sword in the pedestal. It is the Four-Sword. The blade is said to shatter the body of the one who holds it into pieces. It's also said to have once been wielded by the hero who defeated Vaati and sealed him away in the first place. As Zelda moves in to examine the sword, it shifts, falling slightly to lean at an angle. It hasn't even been touched, at least not by Link or Zelda. A monstrous creature appears, a black, spherical creature with a rippling, seemingly unsolid body. At the center is a single, massive eye. This is Vaati the Wind Mage. Vaati's form is seemingly not fixed as he's able to sprout arms, which he does as he swoops down to grab the Princess Zelda. Vaati explains that he sensed a great power coming, so he hid. He is struck by Zelda's beauty and plans to make her his bride. Vaati then flees to his Palace of the Wind. Link loses consciousness. Open your eyes. 3 fairies enter the chamber, uttering words that will gain greater weight in future time. The fairies say it is up to Link to rescue the princess, but he will not be able to take on Vaati alone. At the urging of the fairies, Link expresses his inner King Arthur and draws the sword from the stone. His body is shattered. Not into total pieces, but into duplicates. There's no longer one Link, but multiple, different sides of the same person who will work together to save the princess. The fairies tell Link the great fairies will be able to help him find Vaati's palace. But he must first prove himself by adventuring through 3 realms of the fairies and collecting treasure to prove his courage. Thus, the adventure begins. Unlike past games where Hyrule is presented through an overworld and underworld reflecting the open world format, Four Swords employs a format broken into individual levels. In the original game, there were 5 levels to choose from, including a tutorial level. We select the level we wish to tackle from a map screen. The 5 initial levels are broken up into 2 parts. There are 4 levels, including the tutorial, which can be played in any order. After completing the 3 non-tutorial levels, the final level, Vaati's Palace, is revealed. The Anniversary Edition features 6 additional stages. 3 of them, known as the Realm of Memories, are unlocked after completing Vaati's Palace. Another 3, known as the Hero's Trial, are unlocked after Link collects 30,000 rupees. The 5 base levels reflect the traditional elements seen in many fantasy stories. The Forest stage represents Earth, an Ice stage representing water, a Fire stage, and Vaati's Palace represents the wind. Generally, each level is split into 3 segments. The first 2 segments feature a variety of puzzles and challenges to tackle as players try to reach the end goal. The third segment features a boss fight. In the Anniversary Edition, the playfield is displayed on the top screen. The bottom screen features sort of a Zelda 1 inspired radar. Not a full-on mini-map, but a grid of squares representing the current area, with the end goal and Link's location marked. We begin our adventure in the Chambers of Insight, a cave-themed area. This is an optional tutorial level to help players get a grasp on how to play the game. As a tutorial level, it features more than 3 segments, unlike most other areas in the game. From the start, players are ushered through a series of self-contained challenges by the stray fairies from Majora's Mask. Players may speak to the fairies to learn how to accomplish each task, or they are free to figure it out on their own. In a single-player game, the Four Swords splits Link into 2, one green Link, and another of a color of the player's choice. I chose purple. We control only one Link at a time. We can swap between the 2 by pressing the L button. We can also press the X button, which makes Green Link blow a whistle. The other Link then falls in place behind Green Link and follows him. We need to make the other Link follow at times in order to trigger some actions which require both Links, such as pushing large blocks or lifting large stones. Other times we need to control both Links individually to accomplish tasks that require both, such as stepping on individual floor switches or pulling certain levers. The tutorial guides us through a number of situations, teaching the controls and actions from fighting, pushing, pulling, swimming, and using items. In Four Swords, Link can carry only one item at a time. He starts with a shield by default, but he can pick up and swap out other items. Most of the items featured in the game originate from past Zelda titles. Returning items include shields, bows, bombs, boomerangs, and Pegasus shoes. Also included are the magnetic gloves and Rock's cape, returning from Oracle of Seasons. In a 2004 Nintendo Dream interview, translated by Shmupulations, director Hidemaru Fujibayashi said, "A Zelda game always needs new items. It's hard for us to come up with them. In my case, I like to imagine things that appear in fairy tales or items used in scientific experiments." The new item to appear in Four Swords is notable. It is the Nat Hat. This item allows players to grow and shrink at will. In a 2004 interview with Nintendo Dream and translated on Shmupulations, Hidemaru Fujibayashi said, "The initial idea for the Nat Hat came not from him, but from Zelda co-creator Shigeru Miyamoto." According to Fujibayashi, Miyamoto said, "He'd like to play with getting inside treasure chests and making mischief." Fujibayashi continued, "Well, how about an item that makes Link small, I thought. It turned out that controlling a 2-pixel wide version of Link was quite fun." Of these items, only the shield and Nat Cap were used in my tutorial section. Each individual tutorial area in the Chambers of Insight ends with a pair of portals. If both Links stand on a portal, they will advance to the next area. It took me around 11 minutes to complete the tutorial challenges that I encountered. I completed only one challenge within the Chambers of Insight. There are more to find, but I assumed that I had learned everything the game wished to teach me, and I was ready to venture into the world and find the Great Fairies. As mentioned earlier, the Great Fairies are found in 3 regions, which can be tackled in any order. I first ventured into the forest area known as the Sea of Trees. There is an element of randomness to each of the stages. Each time you venture through a stage, it will be a little different. I don't fully know how the stage generation and arrangement works, but a Nintendo Power Guide describes the level generation and randomization in this way. The system randomly selects a huge dungeon setting, then fits in a random part, that is a particularly evil challenge, to create one of countless wicked dungeons. For me, when I entered the Sea of Trees, the first real challenge I ran into involved picking up Purple Link and throwing him over a gap, in order to step on a floor switch and extend a bridge. From there, I encountered some unique enemies and 4 swords, which I did not see in my playthrough of the tutorial. They are armored enemies with red bodies and a single eyeball peeking out between their armored plates. When hit with the sword, they close up. It took me a second to figure out how to defeat these enemies, and I really only came to the solution because of things I picked up by Zelda osmosis. These enemies have to be pulled apart. There are handles on either side, and with a Link holding onto either side, we can pull the enemy until it splits in two. It's actually kind of gross, especially because the red color of these enemies gives the impression of torn flesh, although this is really just a bit of color coding. We will find other enemies which require teamwork to defeat, and they come in different colors. After defeating those enemies, I navigated a hedge maze populated by spiky explosive enemies to collect a key, and then slashed through some grass and bushes to find another key and reach the end of the first segment of the level. The entire segment took me 6 minutes 11 seconds. The second segment opened with an area featuring a river running down the center. The river has a fast current which we can't swim against. Thanks to a Rocks Cape pickup on the north side of the river, we can jump bank to bank to collect treasure chests as we move down the river. At least, that's the idea. I fell while attempting the second jump, and had to skip out on a number of treasure chests. Just beyond the river, I found a hand car, or pump car, a minecart powered by its passengers. Minecarts were introduced to the Zelda series in the Oracle games, and regularly appear in games directed by Hidemaru Fujibayashi, as both the Oracle titles and Four Swords are. While the minecarts in the Oracle titles moved automatically after players jumped aboard, this one requires player input to operate. A steady, even rhythm of button presses. Quick tapping got me nowhere. Using 2 pump cars, I traveled from the left side of the map to the center. In the center area, there was a second hedge maze that required me to push blocks and fight enemies hidden in bushes to reach a key, which I then used to access the end of the second part of the level. It took me 6 minutes 39 seconds to clear this segment. The third segment is a boss fight. The boss is a giant carnivorous plant. It goes unnamed in the manual, the Nintendo Power Guide, and the Prima Strategy Guide, but the Zelda Encyclopedia identifies it as Big Manhandla, a re-envisioning of the Zelda 1 boss. This boss, along with others in the game, require players to work together to reveal weaknesses, and they generally feature some sort of color-coded element that players need to pay attention to in order to deal damage. In a 2005 Nintendo Power interview, Fujibayashi said, "Overall, the bosses are designed to be good for 4-sword play. Big Manhandla is fought in 2 phases. In the first phase, it features 3 rotating heads, or blooms, which open and close. The blooms can only be damaged by the link that matches the color it has when it opens. Once all 3 blooms are destroyed, the second phase begins. Big Manhandla sprouts a single bloom and 2 handles on either side. When both handles are pulled out, which can be done one at a time with the same color link if wanted, the bloom is pulled to the center where it opens, revealing a color. The matching link can then damage it. After 2 rounds of this, the boss falls. I completed this segment in 2 minutes 7 seconds. We then see a short cutscene where Link meets the Great Fairy. She deemed my Links hero eggs and awarded me a silver key. I collected 2,200 rupees. I understand a minimum of 1,000 rupees are required to get the key. Next, I headed to Talus Cave. This is an ice-themed level. The first challenge I came upon in the first segment was a maze area which required the Nat Hat to navigate. I passed through small holes in the wall of a stone maze to snag rupees and a key. Through a locked door, I tackled a few combat challenges, including using bombs and my sword to defeat some enemies on a platform suspended over a void. There were 2 moving platforms we can ride to circle around the enemies. I also encountered a second group of armored enemies, which required teamwork to defeat. These ones have a green body and no handles. Instead, when they retreat into their armor, we pick them up and throw them. The computer moves the other Link to stand opposite of us and slashes to defeat them. I also took on more of those red enemies we have to pull apart, and some dragon-like enemies with a green bubble around their thin neck. This we just have to slash quickly as possible to make the bubble disappear and then slash their neck. The bubble regenerates quickly, and at least in a single-player game, I found them pretty annoying. It took me around 9 minutes to complete the first segment. In the second segment, I used Rock's cape to leap over holes as I slid across a sheet of ice. I navigated some thin icy walkways, and in the center of the level, the magnetic gloves returned. This item was first introduced in Oracle of Seasons, and it's a pretty clever item which is used for both navigation and combat. In my experience while playing Four Swords, it is primarily a navigation item used cooperatively. Players need to pick up the glove, then take turns carrying each other over holes from the other side of a wall. Links can also be pulled over gaps by another Link. I completed the second segment of the level within 5 minutes 42 seconds. The third segment is a boss fight against a giant snail identified in the Zelda Encyclopedia as Dara Zol. We need to use the Pegasus boots to knock it into a wall of ice, freezing it. Then we ram into it to break the ice and repeat the process. After 3 or 4 rounds of knocking it into the ice wall, the boss transforms into a smaller enemy that, to me, resembles an Octorok, but it has 4 balloons surrounding it. 3 of the balloons are gray, and 1 matches the color of a Link. When I had purple Link selected, the top balloon would be green. When I had green Link selected, the bottom would be purple. I did not understand why it was doing this. I kept getting a message asking which color I saw. Well, that depended on the Link that I currently had selected, and neither color matched the Link that I was currently using. When I attempted to just slash it, Link would get shocked. I wound up ramming it with the Pegasus shoes and eventually found that I could ram it from the bottom balloon with purple Link and not get hurt. I wasn't clear on why this worked, but I eventually did beat the boss. I later figured out that the second phase is designed to encourage cooperative play. Players are supposed to communicate to other players where their color is located so they can land hits on the boss and defeat it. My brute forcing technique got me through it this time. I completed the third segment in 4 minutes 43 seconds. The Great Fairy of Ice deemed me a little egg waiting to hatch into a hero. I collected around 1,876 rupees and received a silver key. The third and final Great Fairy is found in Death Mountain, a fire and lava themed stage. Because the level is set inside a volcano, the grass inside is on fire, but it can still be cut and cleared like normal grass. It'll just hurt players if they touch it. Near the start of the stage, I again made use of the Nat Hat, and was introduced to spring pads which bounce Link as he steps on them. Near the center of the stage, I had to navigate a sort of maze using these spring pads. The outer wall of the maze was lined with pads which bounced players back to the start if they stepped on them. Spring pads in the interior section of the maze bounced players a different direction each time they stepped on them. I made my way to the top left corner, where I found bombs and a key to end the segment. I completed it within 5 minutes 55 seconds. At the start of the second segment, I had to fight a Wizrobe. For the very first time that I can recall, this classic Zelda enemy had elemental powers. It shot fire, which would light Link's tunic on fire and cause him to run around almost uncontrollably. The center of the stage contained 4 rooms blocked by flame doors. The first opened by stepping on a floor switch, and the remaining 3 were opened by defeating enemies. Once the final enemy was defeated, I was awarded with a key to end the second segment. I spent a lot of time exploring optional areas in this segment, and I finished it in 9 minutes 43 seconds. In the third segment, we face a boss known as Goen. It is a fire creature created by several sentient flame creatures with eyes. We fight it by engaging in a classic match of Dead Man's Volley, with a twist. The projectile fired by Goen can only be hit by a matching colored Link. Goen falls apart after 2 volleys, and 1 flame needs to be hit to deal damage. Incorrect flames will be destroyed by a sword slash. Goen then reformed into a small, scraggly, burned-looking thing for a second round of volleying. Goen fell after a third round of volleying. I found this to be the easiest boss in the game. I completed the level in 1 minute, 9 seconds, with 2,385 rupees. The Great Fairy of Fire again deemed Link a little egg waiting to hatch into a hero, and granted a third and final silver key. With all 3 keys collected, another level, Vaati's Palace, appears. It's a sky island, the first ever for the Zelda series, making this stage the first ever sky area for the series. We'll see sky islands and sky areas and dungeons appear in later games as well. When we select Vaati's Palace, we see a brief scene where Link uses the silver keys to open one of 3 doors, the door on the right. We then enter Vaati's Palace. It was here in Vaati's Palace that I first saw a new enemy for this series that will continue into future games, the Rupee-like. It's a variation on the like, which each rupees instead of shields or tunics. It has a stalk raising out of the top of its head with a rupee on the end. Rupee-likes use these rupees as lures, hiding in the ground to strike a player unaware. In the center of the stage, players must light torches by clashing their swords together with the other Link. I had a difficult time getting this sword clashing to trigger. I'm not sure why. I spent some time poking around in other areas because of the trouble I had lighting the torches. Eventually I got them to light and slashed through bushes to head down a winding path and claim a key. I finished the first segment in 9 minutes 57 seconds. The second segment revolved around magical colored paths. Only the Link of the matching color can walk on the path. The other Link has to be lifted and carried or tossed over the paths that don't match. I completed this segment in roughly 5 minutes. The third segment is naturally a boss fight, the final boss fight against Vaati himself. Vaati dons a suit of armor. A whirlwind forms underneath him, and he occasionally fires electric energy balls. We have to avoid getting sucked up into the whirlwind. Instead, we toss bombs into the whirlwind. They get sucked up and will damage Vaati if they explode, causing him to come lower to the ground. We need to hit him with the bombs until he is on the ground, then we can hit him with the sword. I struggled a while with this fight, not because Vaati was proving to be particularly difficult, he wasn't, but because I was having a hard time hitting him with my bombs. The problem was that I skipped through the tutorial text box when I picked up the bombs. If I had actually read it, I would have realized that these bombs actually represent a first for the series. The bombs are remote bombs, and can be blown up with the press of the A button. Remote bombs are not frequently used, but will appear in at least 2 other games. After a few rounds, Vaati falls, and a portal to end the segment appears. But it's a classic fake out. Vaati reappears and a second round of fighting begins. In the second and final fight, Vaati combines elements from 2 previous bosses. The Dead Man's Volley from Gohan returns, and at times Vaati will sprout arms which resemble the blooms from Big Man Handla, and are defeated in the same way. After taking a final hit, Vaati is sucked back into the Force Sword. Zelda is free. She awakes, and after a brief moment comes to realize that Link has been split into 2. She realizes the stories of the Force Sword are true. The Force Sword glows, and the Links are merged back into one. Zelda and Link plan to return the sword to the shrine. The credits roll, and we're given one more chance to round up rupees, by opening chests and hitting stray fairies, all while avoiding rupee-likes and treasure-stealing rupee wraiths. This is the first time in the series that the credits are playable. I'm not sure if this continues into any of the other multiplayer entries. After the credits roll, we see the Force Sword has been returned to its rightful place in the shrine. Zelda, Link, and the fairies depart, sure that Vaati won't escape again. At least, not anytime soon. In the Anniversary Edition, completing the 3 Great Fairy levels and Vaati's Palace opens a new set of levels known as the Realm of Memories. We'll explore those next week. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please subscribe. If you've already subscribed, you are awesome! I'm Paul Riley, and I'll see you next week.